What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Schreckbein, joined every Monday and Wednesday by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We are live at St. Vincent College here at Latrobe, Pennsylvania, wrapping up week 1 of Pittsburgh Steelers training camp. It was an exciting one. It was a warm one. We got tan. We got wet. Plenty of action. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good. We did battle, the elements. We battled some heat. We battled some rain,
No
some
doubt.
faulty podcast mics. We worked through a lot this week, but it was fun. It was good to be back and watch football actually happen and see what these 2023 Steelers look like in person for really the first time.
Yeah, I agree. And we do apologize to everybody who hung with us during the mic issues. Hopefully we get them fixed here. Hopefully next week as we go live, that they do not bug out and we have no issues moving forward. We apologize again. Appreciate all the love and support that we've gotten through this week. We got plenty more action coming for you guys. We're going to dive into some winners, some losers from week 1. But first, the biggest news outside of Monty the Mullet calling it quits in the middle of week 1. Quan Alexander is here in Pittsburgh or here in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers on a 1-year deal, joins the Pittsburgh Steelers as they enter week 2 of training camp, an option that they looked into earlier in the offseason, decided to bring back now that they've entered camp. What were your thoughts when you saw the signing?
Yeah, this is a good move. Feel like he's in a sweet spot where he's still pretty young, but has a ton of veteran experience. He's more of a coverage guy, which I feel like is a different skill set than Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, who to me seem like more inside the box type of players. He's, I think he has a position that really needs it. You probably had 2 inside linebackers that you were actually real comfortable with as starters going into training camp here, but now you have 3 probably. Because the next guy is Mark Robinson, and we'll talk about him in a minute. But I don't know how confident. That's one injury away from Mark Robinson or Tanner Muse or someone having to step up and be a starter, and that might have concerned you a little bit. But with Quan Alexander, it just adds another dimension. It makes you so much deeper and gives you another starting quality guy, but a guy who can also bring you a little bit of a different skill set. So 1-year deal seems like a good move.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Quan is a guy that, you put the pieces to the puzzle together, and I know I've said that a number of times this offseason, but Cole Holcomb seems to be the field general. Landon Roberts is the run stuffer. Quan Alexander could come in here and be a passing option. I just think that it rounds out all of your options, and the Steelers they didn't come in here with a hardcore plan. They didn't come in here looking at any of these 3 guys as the future of the inside linebacker position. They look at all 3 of them as, hopefully this guy works out and we could keep him for the next however many years. But for right now, it's just about finally finding a piece, and that's all the Steelers are doing. And at this point, they're just testing out anybody that they could get their hands on. Quan Alexander has some skills that the other 2 I don't think possesses strongly, and is able to come in here and kind of compete for a starting job. Do you take that as a lack of faith a little bit in Mark Robinson, who I think a lot of people had very high hopes for coming into St. Vincent?
Yeah, I think those high hopes, quite honestly, if you're asking me, might have been a little premature. I think this is a guy who's still a ways away from really contributing in super meaningful ways. That's not to say that the team is. I would say that I don't think the team has less confidence in him. I still think they believe in his potential, but when you consider that Quan is a 1-year deal, Mark will, I think, be around for at least another year. You still, aren't putting him into super pressure packed situation. You can let him be a situational player and just use him in situations that are advantageous to him while Quan takes on a larger role. And then, next year, if he doesn't show much improvement, if you don't think that there's a full-time future there for Mark Robinson, then you let him go and you move on. But that's not a problem that I think they're worried about until next year.
Yeah, I look at it the same way. Like, what was the expectations for Mark Robinson? You looked at him starting the end of last season and really taking on those reps, but I think it was more of, hey, let's get his feet wet. Let's work these things out. Let's see what we have in Mark Robinson, because these other guys aren't going to be here longer than a year. You now look at him coming in here and it's just, okay, cool. Can we develop him a little bit more? He is still certainly in this competition. He still is certainly a player that could compete for some quality playing time. But I think overall, you just got to look at him and go, okay, Mark is a sixth round pick and he's only entering year 2 of his career, year 3 now of his career. He's not somebody that you're going to look at and say, oh, okay, this guy's definitely going to turn into anything. The Steelers hope he turns into something. I think he's got the potential to, but do I think it's a shot at anybody? No, I just think we need the best pieces that we could find. That's how the Steelers view this. And they went out and they got somebody that they believe is the best piece that they could find. And now they're going to try to make it work. Quan Alexander, in my opinion, good signing. I think the Steelers kind of rounded that out. They do have one roster spot left after Monty the Mullet did retire. Wondering where they're going to go with that one, but I think that's a kind of wait and see. Alfonso Graham and DeMonte Kazee injuries will play a role into that, I believe, but that's just something that we're going to have to wait. From what I know, Alfonso Graham will learn the extent of his injury tomorrow or today, I guess, when this is released, and we'll kind of know more from there. Let's dive into week 1 of training camp. Winners, losers. I think there were plenty of both. We'll start with the winners. We've gone over this every single day on these live streams about, hey, who was impressed today? Who was not impressed today? We've come up with plenty of names. Who is your winner, or at least one of your winners, in week 1 of Steelers training camp?
Well, I think the one guy who I think across all 4 days was really impressive in each one of those days was Anthony McFarland. That was a
Yes.
guy that we came back, every night, and we were talking about how his speed was really impressive. He was playing with a bunch of different units, but looked really comfortable in all of them. He was running the ball. He was catching out of the backfield. That speed was on full display, and even in situations where okay, they're in pads, they're not hitting you full. Like he was outrunning everyone, Like there were plays where he was ripping off big chunks of yards, and there was no one who really, even you would think, even in pads, had a prayer of catching up with him in the open field. So Anthony McFarland was probably my biggest one coming in. He was really battling for that running back 3 spot, and he had the upper hand, I think, coming into this week, but he expanded his lead and is so far ahead, I think, especially with, like you mentioned, Alfonso Graham going down, like the competition behind him is so far in the rear view as it stands right now.
Yeah, that's how I kind of view it too. Is Anthony McFarland has been the most impressive guy here at training camp, in my opinion. He has kind of lit up the field. There are a lot of people talking about, oh, well, he's an RB3, he's a non-factor. I kind of disagree to a point. I mean, Anthony McFarland has taken first team reps every single day. He's got a connection with Kenny Pickett. He's making plays with the first team guys. He's busting out long runs. I get it. There are no pads on. We have 2 more days before the Steelers actually start to utilize their running backs in ways that you will decide whether or not they make this football team. But for right now, it is really nice to see what Anthony McFarland is doing. He's definitely my biggest winner just because of his versatility and what he's putting on the field, and just really how unstoppable he is. At this point, he's catching passes on the sideline. He's bursting big runs. He's, finding open spots. There's just seemingly nothing that he hasn't done well. And again, people have pointed this out. He's Mr. July. He's Mr. August. He's done this before. I agree 100%. But I also think that maturity comes in the NFL, and development is always different for every single player. And if this is the year, if it took 4 seasons for Anthony McFarland to burst out and become this big star, this big playmaker, well, then this is the year. If not, then we'll see it again and we'll be disappointed at the end of August. But for right now, I'm going to take exactly what I see, and what I see is Anthony McFarland looks very, very, very good. My big winner so far, or one of my winners, Anthony McFarland, was definitely my top one, but Connor Hayward is another one for certain. He actually took a run today, which I laughed at and just said, that was cool. I'm glad that he's actually finally getting some fullback reps. He's getting some halfback reps, which, I don't want to be this guy, but a couple of months ago, people were saying there's no way he's going to play fullback. No, he's definitely going to play fullback. He is their fullback. He is their halfback. He's their tight end. He's their slot receiver. I talked to Mitch Trubisky the other day, and he said that, Connor's just so good that they're going to find a place for him, and they're going to find a role for him, and he's going to make plays on this offense. I think he's been very, very impressive with what we've seen from him so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first heard that, kind of H-back, fullback idea for Connor Hayward, I was worried, are they trying to, shoehorn him into a position that he might not fit in just because they want to get him on the field?
Yes.
But I think it's kind of played out with the best case scenario, which is he fits in all of these roles. Actually, they're not looking for a position for him. They have positions for him. They're just figuring out, okay, when do we want to use him in this position? When do we want to use him in that position? Where is he most effective? And I think next week is gonna. I think he's already been really impressive, but next week when we can maybe see him as a blocker, as a fullback, I think that's gonna I'm optimistic that he's going to perform just as well, and he's going to show that he can be a complete player like that when the pads actually come on. He's not just a pass catcher, and he can run when there are no pads on. I think he's actually going to be able to block some guys and really be a full time member of this offense in all of those different roles.
Yeah, I kind of see Connor Hayward right now as a guy who's going to be utilized all over the field, who is going to be a much bigger piece of this offense than I think me and you eh, or anybody anticipated coming in here. Just like you said, like he could do so much, and the Steelers look at him in such a positive light that, again, like I agree with you. I don't see how he isn't on the field a good chunk of the time on offense this season if it continues. And I mean, there are people out there that are like, there's no way he's the second best route runner on this team. I think right now, yeah, he probably is. I think he's always opened. And if you could use him as a Swiss Army knife and get the most out of him, I don't see how you keep him off the field. You got another winner for us? Have you ever Googled yourself and were shocked at the personal information exposed on one of those public listing sites? As somebody who only wants the right information online for me and my loved ones, it's very important that not everything is leaked on the internet. Data brokers are making a fortune selling your information to robocallers, spammers, and others who want to learn more about you, like where you live. Today's sponsors, Aura, can identify data brokers exposing your information and submit opt out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it super hard to do so. Let Aura handle it for you. Aura also does so much more to protect you and your family from online threats you can't see. I just started using Aura, and let me tell you, when you Google my name now, things feel, well, pretty good. It's really easy to set up so you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. You get everything at one affordable price. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. You can either let people continue to exploit and profit off of your private information, or you can go to aura.com/Steelers Talk to start your 2-week free trial. That's aura.com/Steelers Talk for your 2-week free trial of Aura.
Yeah, and this is another guy that I think has a reputation as a Mr. July or a Mr. August, but Cody White has caught
Yes.
everything. Like he's just caught
Literally
everything.
everything.
I have not seen him drop a pass. And it's another guy who I think is climbing up. He's kind of he was a perpetual, third team, or maybe gets one or two snaps with the second team, but you can see him start to climb a little bit. Again, it's one of those guys that, you got to wait and see what comes in next week and what comes with time because he's, I think, done this before. But I mean, if he sticks around, like he has a bunch of special teams experience. He is looking like playmaker on offense. Like I think he's a guy who could push a pretty deep receivers room, and I guess that's my biggest takeaway too is that just this receivers room looks a lot deeper than even I came in with pretty high expectations and pretty high image and opinion of the receivers room, but Cody White adds another layer to it, and he's just been really impressive all week, catching passes from a couple different quarterbacks too.
Yeah, I agree. Cody White's been a dude. He hasn't dropped a single ball. I don't believe he's made some very impressive diving catches or some one-handed grabs. But he is like he's the practice squad guru. He is the Mr. July, Mr. August as well. The thing about Cody White, and I agree with you, he is definitely a winner here. But my thing about Cody White is there's nothing that he does that is just like extraordinary. You know what I mean? You don't look at him and say, "Oh, this guy could break out a 60-yard run or this guy could go up and get a jump ball or any." He just does everything consistently well, like, but he's a bland NFL player. And unfortunately, I think that holds him back a little bit. But I think that if you're fighting for that sixth spot and they come down to, oh, well, it's Gunner, it's, maybe it's Hakeem Butler, maybe it's Cody White. I'm not going to say Cody White can't beat everybody else out. I think
Mm.
that if he stays consistent, I think he's got the highest mountain to climb to make the 53-man roster. But there's a reason they've kept him around this long. There's a reason that he's played in active games throughout his career. You look back to, I think, the 2020 season and or maybe the 2021 season, and Cody White goes down with an injury, and everybody's talking, oh, he's done. That's the end of Cody White. He's going to get cut, and we'll never see him again in Pittsburgh. I've heard in that season when that happened that the Steelers didn't want to cut him. They didn't even think about it because they look at Cody White as a guy who might have the best hands on the team at the time. There's a reason that he's still around. I'm going to say that. And I don't know if he makes this team, but I think right now, heading into week 2, he's putting up a good resume to say, hey, look, maybe this is the year that I break this 53-man roster. Maybe this is the year that I contribute to this team, even if it's just on special teams. I do. I think Cody White's definitely been a pretty solid winner. I'm going to go the other side of the ball here. Keanu Neal has been stud,
Yeah.
absolute stud. Rushing off the edge. At this point, he's the only starting safety that is still healthy, with Minka missing time with personal issues and DeMonte KZ being out with an ankle injury. He's playing deep safety. He's playing in the box. He's playing inside linebacker. He rushed off the edge. He's playing a little bit of slot. He's doing everything. He's exactly what the Steelers want him to be. He looks good. He looks fresh. He looks young and energetic. I mean, he's just a guy that right now he very much so excites me.
Right, and especially with Juan in the mix now, I think you're gonna see more of him at safety, and just the way the roster looks right now, like you said, with KZ and Minka kind of out for the foreseeable future. Neil's going to get to show what he is. I feel like there's much more confidence in him as an inside the box player, quite honestly, at least from my end,
Yes.
like as a thumper and, run stopper. So we're going to get to really see him as a pass coverage guy. And I thought, in the limited reps we did see of him here, like he looked pretty good. He looked very solid in pass coverage. I was not, very concerned at all about that. And I think he probably exceeded what the image I had in my head of him as a pass coverage guy was like.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't know what to expect. I kind of coming in here, I thought, okay, he could be a better Terrell Edmonds and what the Steelers want him to do, but at the same time, there's got to be a reason that he's bounced around the NFL like he has. I don't know. Maybe things change when the pads come on, but for right now, he's a dude that I'm looking at and going, yeah, no, Keanu Neal could be a scary piece
Yeah.
to the Steelers defense. He just feels like a Steeler. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
you
yeah.
watch him play and you go, oh yeah, that's a Steeler. That's a
Right.
guy right there. And yeah,
Right.
I do think the upside is there. You got another one?
I was just gonna agree with your point about Keanu Neal kind of feeling like a Steeler. I think he's not making this comparison at all, but I think built in the mold of like Troy Polamalu and even
Ryan
even
Clark, dude.
yeah,
He
Ryan
gives
Clark. Yeah,
me
that was it.
hard Ryan Clark vibes.
Yeah, obviously, probably not as good as those guys, but I think plays with a similar edge and a similar style. So I think that's a really good point, and I like that a lot. And I think that's a really good thing to point out because I think that just adds to kind of the good fit that he is in Pittsburgh. I kind of want to stick with another safety who, in the absence of Minka, in the absence of DeMonte KZ, has really stepped up, and that was Kenny Robinson. This is a guy that Mike Tomlin pointed out, as a guy who was really making plays and making the most of this special opportunity that he's gotten. I believe this is a former XFL guy who is bounced around
Oh,
the
I don't know.
NFL,
Probably.
XFL, UFC.
You might be right. I don't know. I don't pay attention to Kenny Robinson. I know he's a local kid,
Yes,
Wilkinsburg.
that's kind of why I knew. So Kenny Robinson, I think, was a West Virginia local
Yep.
kid. So that's why I kind of vaguely had him in the back of my mind. When I'm 99% sure he was in the XFL at some point. But anyway, he's been so good. He's been all around the field. He is always around the ball when he is on the field, making plays and pass coverage. He had an interception today. It was a poor decision and throw by Mason Rudolph, but hey, he took advantage of it and came up with the ball. So I've just been so impressed with him, and he keeps moving up kind of unofficial depth chart. It is, in part, like I said, because DeMonte KZ and Minka Fitzpatrick are not available right now, but he's earning more. Like it's not completely on accident that he's moving up to like the second team and even a little bit of the first team. He's earned those reps there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'm glad that you brought him up because if you weren't, I was gonna. He's taken over. Like he's a guy that in the last 2-3 days has just gone off and made play after play. Yeah, he actually had two interceptions today. One of them was in seven
Oh,
shots
right, right,
in
right,
the
right. I
red zone.
forgot. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And then the second one was the deep ball to Calvin, both from Mason. But yeah, dude, he looks good. Like every day you're out here and you're hearing coaches yell like, "Yeah, boy, Kenny! Like, way to do it, Kenny!" And you're just like, "Kenny Pickett? No, Kenny
mm,
Robinson." And
mm,
I think that I don't know how he makes his way onto the step chart. I don't know what he could do. I don't know where the ceiling is for this guy when it comes to the Steelers. But this has happened before, and you've seen guys break onto the scene that you never thought could be possible. But if we're going to pick a guy right now that I think is having the best defensive play out there this week, I would say Kenny Robinson. If not, my next guy and Kenny Robinson might be the two, I would say. And that
okay.
guy is Elijah Riley. And I would
Mm,
say those two right there have consistently every single day done nothing but impress you. Neither of them have seemingly had a bad moment, at least that you could pick up on.
right.
It's just like good play after good play in different ways. Like Kenny Robinson's out here making interceptions and PBUs and our pass breakups, excuse me. And Elijah Riley's out here pass breakups, interception on the first day. He's had a sack every single day. He's just a dude that right now both of those guys just feel like they're they're just out here balling, and I don't know if it's because they're playing against the second team for a large chunk of this. I have no idea, but they both look very, very good.
But even then, like they're doing both those guys, Robinson and Riley, are doing exactly what you would expect someone who could be a huge contributor to this team to do against a second team.
Yes.
They look like they are in a class all their own when they're playing against those second. They are a step above those second team guys so clearly every time they step on the field.
Yeah, I agree, and I mean, I don't again, like I don't know. I think for Elijah Riley, like that's he's been my guy since the beginning to be the starter, and I think that that's still very much so a strong possibility. But for Kenny Robinson, I don't know where the ceiling is. I don't know where he's going to max out. But if he keeps going, like there's going to be a strong argument for this guy to make the roster somehow and figure out his way there. Again, I don't know how he does it, but I mean, you go into week 2, and both of these guys, that's all you hear is "Attaboy Elijah, attaboy Kenny." You got to start picking up on something and saying, okay, well, this guy is a guy that we have to start. We have to start watching for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's flip it over to the other side here. Some week 1 losers. I think we got a couple of them. I'm going to let you go first. Who's your starter here for week 1 loser?
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate because I just don't think this week with no pads like really plays to his strengths. But Darnell Washington, I don't think had a good week, and
Yeah.
part of it wasn't even he wasn't able to show off his blocking ability. He had a ton of drops. I felt like he also had a false start and 7 shots one time when he was working with I believe the first team, and those plays stick out. That's just a pressure packed moment, and he's a rookie. I get it. First kind of NFL action, but they're we're hoping to, expecting to trust him with some pretty major responsibilities, and he just kind of has not lived up to I think the hype that a lot of people had for him, that I had for him. Long way to go, obviously, but it was not a good start I think for Darnell Washington this week.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Darnell, it's not his strong suit. I get it, but there's just been no moment where you're like, "Ooh, Darnell Washington, that could be the guy." You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it just Connor Hayward's done so well, and Pat Fryermuth is Pat Fryermuth to the point where there are days where you forget that Darnell Washington is on this team, and that's
Mhm.
not good. I think that could change once the pads come on and he starts just bulldozing guys on the line of scrimmage. I think that would be huge. But for right now, I do agree with you. I think I'm not worried about him by no means, but would label him a loser of week 1 for sure, because I think it was an opportunity for him to, catch some passes and kind of show that he could be a versatile player. And I don't think he saw that. I don't think he saw that really at all. My big one is a big disappointment for me. A guy that I have still huge expectations for this season, but I think that dimmed a little bit after week 1, and that is Calvin Austin. I thought Calvin had a very, very bad week. Dropped a ton of passes, a ton of passes. Never really seemed to get a rhythm going at all. The Steelers tried desperately to get this guy moving. And really just, I think one play stood out to me from him, and that was a deep ball over Cole Holcomb. Besides that, I don't think there was a moment where I went, "Oh, that was a good play by Calvin Austin." It was really a lot of, "Oh, Calvin's not really having a good week." And that, for a guy like Calvin Austin, who could be such a huge part of this offense, and I think the Steelers want to be such a huge part of this offense, it is very disappointing, to sit here and say that he was definitely a week one loser.
Yeah. And I think the moments that really stood out to me were when he was matched up against bigger guys like, Joey Porter. I think occasionally Corey Trice on the outside. Like, I get it. Like, those are bad matchups for him. But if you want to be a full time contributor, if you want to live up to, I think, the expectations that a lot of people have for you, and like you said, I think that the Steelers have for him, you got to win those. Like, no one's going to take it easy on you if you're running with the first team in a real regular season game. So, you can't make excuses like that, and that's just not how it works. And yeah, it was really a little disheartening. It was a disappointing time for Calvin Austin. I still think he has plenty of time to make up for it. He's not, cooked by any means, but it was just not a good foot to get off on for Calvin Austin in 2023.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think that this was the last thing that we expected, but I do think that some people called it and said, "Hey, maybe there's going to be some rust. Maybe there's going to be some concern here," and maybe they were right. You got any other losers?
Yeah, I thought James Pierre. I
Oh,
kind of I like James. I think I like Pierre. I think I'm a James Pierre guy, but he did
yeah,
not.
yeah.
I think I did not think he looked good this week. Just didn't stand out, first of all, but then also when you did kind of notice that he was on the field, it was because he was getting burned. He was having guys like
Yes.
Cody White catch balls on him. Um, Someone I figured would kind of compete for one of those corner spots and perhaps play a little bit. I thought he had a decent year last year, like in some tough spots when the Steelers were dealing with injuries on the back end. I thought he was perfectly capable and perfectly fine as a reserve option, but yeah, just again not standing out enough for me to be like, yeah, this guy can compete in a really loaded cornerback room when there are open opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. James Pierre is a shocker on this list to me, to be honest with you, but not in a sense of I thought he was a didn't think he was a loser, more in a sense of yeah, I didn't really pay attention to James Pierre, and I think that was probably wise because he didn't do anything that impressed me. And I agree. I think the what helps him a little bit here is the fact that guys like Luke Barku haven't been very exciting, haven't really
Yeah.
impressed me at all. Um, guys like Madre Harper haven't really impressed me. Corey Trice, who I don't want to label Corey a loser on my list.
Yeah.
Maybe you have him on yours, but was definitely not a winner. Definitely in those big moment opportunities, more times than not, he got beat, which wasn't great. But yeah, James Pierre, I think he has such a strong leg on the competition that he could lose it, and you don't want
Yeah.
to see that happen in week one. And I do think, yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he did fall a little bit. I got one bigger name corner. People are going to be upset about this one too. Joey Porter Jr.
Mhm.
Um, thought that he had a strong day one, really really strong day one, and then afterwards I thought he completely fell off. I thought he was getting beat. I thought he just didn't seem to have the edge on anybody at all. Like, I'm not saying he didn't make a play here or there, but that's the thing is if he made a play, it was just like the receiver didn't like drop the ball or it was a bad pass or it wasn't like there was no moment where it was like, oh, Joey, that was a great play by Joey. Not after day one. And I thought that was disheartening just because he had so many opportunities. Like, they kept this guy on the field and they're going to continue to keep this guy on the field. But Joey Porter Jr. would come in with the first team and he would stay for the second team and then he would stay for the third team and then he'd come out for a rep so that Corey Trice could go in and then he'd go back in with the third team. And at no moment, against any of them, did you say like, oh man, that was a huge play by Joey Porter Jr. Really, I have a lot of notes in my notepad that say like, great pass by Kenny, great pass by Mitch to whoever Joey Porter in coverage,
Yeah. I agree. And yeah, it is disheartening. I think it's just anytime he really did make a play, he just wasn't particularly sharp. I think there were
Yes.
times where he did make a play or two, but it was him just using some like freakish length and athletic ability. Like, it wasn't necessarily because you felt like he was being really sticky in coverage or he had a good beat on what was happening, what the offense was trying to attack him with. Yeah, I agree with this one, and it's not encouraging. It's kind of it's a concerning one. Obviously, a long way to go, but this is another guy who you just can't make excuses for. This is a guy that people figured was going to be a really key piece right away, and so it is a little concerning, I think, on everyone's end to see that he just hasn't, lived up to what people wanted from him and just doesn't look ready quite yet. Again, understanding that it's week one of his NFL
Yeah.
career. So
Yeah, it is week one. You got to take everything and say, look, at this is a huge learning curve for every rookie that comes in here. I'm not going to shoot this guy down. I'm not going to say he's a bust. I'm not even going to say he's bad. I'm just going to say that in week one, if we're going to label winners and losers, Joey Porter Jr. I think falls in the side of this disappointing week. Disappointing
yeah.
week. Do you have another one?
Do I have another one? Yes, and I think this one I went back and forth on because I thought he had a good end to the week, but the beginning was I still think there are some holes in his game that are a little concerning because again I think he's the top of the depth chart guy, but that's Cole Holcomb, quite honestly.
Yes.
Um, yeah, just like the first 2 days in particular, I think there were at least each day 3 or 4 times at least where he was getting beaten coverage by a receiver or a running back, and that seems to me like it's going to be an easy way for real NFL teams and real NFL games to attack him. Like I said, he had a better end to the week. I thought they used him better situationally, where he was rushing the passer. He wasn't getting put on islands with guys like Calvin Austin or Anthony McFarland who can just run right past him. But if guys like that can run right past him, like there are plenty of fast guys on a ton of NFL teams, and if Holcomb can't cover fast guys, then he's going to get targeted and he's going to get picked apart, and that's going to be a pretty glaring hole. You wonder if the Quan Alexander thing kind of fixes that and takes him out of that role more often, but it was still a little concerning to me.
I think you wonder if that's why they signed Quan Alexander. If they
Mhm.
thought Cole could have been that guy, they saw it in the first 2 days and said, maybe he's not going to be that guy. I do think that he came back. I will say this: there were a lot of moments where he was on wide receivers that I thought, this is a bad matchup for Cole Holcomb, and this is not ideal, and the defense shouldn't ever put him in this situation because, like, even it just shouldn't be expected from him to be able to keep up with Calvin Austin. That
Yeah.
just shouldn't. It's not a realistic situation. And the offense did a good job of putting him in those situations and making him uncomfortable. But I agree. I thought today he came back. He had a really nice pass break up against Najee Harris, which I thought was
Mhm.
impressive. But besides that, I would look at Cole Holcomb. I wouldn't label him, just like you said. Like I would go back and forth. I wouldn't necessarily label him a loser, but I would say that there is plenty of room for growth when it comes to Cole Holcomb and what we've seen out of him. But I will say this, which I think is encouraging, is you looked at like Devin Bush and Miles Jack last season and Robert Spillane. And at this time last year, you were like, yikes. Like this kid, it
Yeah.
was a good play here, good play there. Cole Holcomb, like even the play against Calvin Austin, where he gets beat down the side, like he's only a step behind Calvin
Right.
Austin. And
Right.
you're going, all right, well, that wasn't great. Like that stunk. But if you're only a step behind Calvin Austin as an inside linebacker,
Right.
that's not bad. Like
Yeah.
that's you could build off that.
Yeah. I think you were, like you said, at this time last year, you were absolutely certain that Spillane, Bush, and Miles Jack were not up to that task. I think you have a
Yes.
little bit more hope with a guy like Holcomb, and then obviously adding Quan, like that helps a lot. But yeah, he's a step ahead of where those guys were, but those guys were many, many steps behind. So, you kind
Yes.
of got to balance that out.
I agree. I agree 100%. And I think that's a perfect way to end here is a middle of the ground guy that says maybe he's a winner, maybe he's a loser, but there's some learning. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this week is the pads don't come on until Tuesday. And Tuesday we will see real football. And Tuesday we will get a whole new outlook on everybody that plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers and all the winners and all the losers that we had in week one. It could hurt some guys. It could help some guys. I'm very excited for it. With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk and for sticking with us through all the on-road issues. We will have it fixed. I promise you that by Tuesday afternoon, we will be rocking live streams that everybody wants to enjoy, and there are no echoes with, no lights shutting off, no camera issues, the whole nine. We will have everything down. We learning curve for everybody as we get here through Latrobe, Pennsylvania, St. Vincent College, Pittsburgh Steelers training camp. Make sure to go subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/all Steelers talk. Find us anywhere you get your podcast. Check out everything that comes from Steelers training camp at allsteelers.com. And as Pitt heads into training camp next week, find all that action at insidethepanthers.com. We will be back live on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and every day afterwards to bring you the most up-to-date coverage here at Steelers training camp. Enjoy a beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.